What's the darkest side of humanity you've ever seen? As a vet, I had to deal with pets that were forced to fight in pits, had missing parts, and some were so emaciated that I could count how many days they had left. But nothing hit me as badly as it did when I saw Harley come in. I was working the closing shift at the shelter when an animal control officer came holding this gigantic golden retriever in his arms, and although he was patched up, he was still in horrible condition. One of his eyes was missing and the other was bright red, which were signs of a serious fever. His legs were so busted that one of them was twisted in another direction, and he was whining miserably. The officer was holding the puppy in the gentlest hold, but the golden retriever looked like even lifting his head would put him into a coma. I rushed to prepare our medical table and asked the officer what happened to this poor thing. I cleaned his wounds while the officer told me that he found this dog on the side of a bridge, whining and almost waiting to die. When I let go of the puppy for 1 minute, he was physically trying to stand up as if to escape, but his legs were so shaky that he fell straight down. I asked if they found a chip or his previous owners at all, and he said there were none at all. This little guy was alone in life, and he brought him here, hoping we could find someone to love him or have us put him to rest instead. But when he looked up at me, I could tell he had life left to live, and he was fighting to keep it. I immediately put him on the necessary medication and put him in the best cage I could find because I wanted to make sure he would make it. I even decided to name him for myself, so I named him Harley, because I wanted to make sure he was as fast as a motorcycle as soon as he got better. As the days passed, I tried literally every treatment on him. His legs did slowly get better, but because of his twisted legs, he couldn't even handle getting up. He would try to get up when the other dogs started to get rowdy, but all he could do was shift a little bit forward and fall straight down. The medication only managed to help him to be awake long enough to eat, and even then, it seemed like he barely had an appetite to eat more than just a few bites. At one point, I thought I at least cured his fever when he came in, but he started vomiting out of nowhere. After he started vomiting, I tried every test on him and saw that he had clear signs of pneumonia. I thought he was fine because the fever was finally gone, but he was just getting worse. I could slowly see the fight in his eyes fade. He couldn't even manage to show any energy to new clients who came in. Anytime someone came inside the shelter to adopt a pup, they would take one look at Harley and literally flinch at his state. My boss and I started to talk about how much longer we were going to force him to be in this state, but I couldn't even bear the thought of letting this fighter go. Anyone else in his condition would have been dead a long time ago, and he still hadn't gone, so I wasn't going to let him. I started to look online for a solution because I desperately wanted to make sure he wasn't a lost cause. I started scrolling through forums every night and ordering literally everything I could think of. I was considering ordering new vitamins, tighter casts. I even considered searching for some form of green grass so that maybe this puppy would find some form of relief in the ZA. I was just so desperate, but after looking at a forum for vets, I found something that might be of some use. Eventually, I found another vet talking about their rescue pup finally being able to go on hikes after breaking both of their legs at 12. It was honestly uncommon for old dogs to recover from joint and bone injuries as they're more likely to form arthritis, but this vet found Woundvite chews that eased their dog's pain and even improved their joints. The chews contained turmeric root and organic hemp powder, among several other ingredients that speed up the healing process and help build support in animals' bones and joints. In the comments of that post, I saw a few vets mention they've used Woundvite too, but they've used it to help runs of puppy litters with their weaker immune system to prevent them from catching parvo and other illnesses, as these chews were said to build animals' immune systems. I needed a miracle, so I ordered the chews and prayed that there would be some type of recovery. The next week, I offered a chew to Harley and he didn't want it at first. I had to coax him to gather the appetite to eat something, and when he finally did, he slumped back down. I felt like crying because I was sure this was a sign that nothing was going to work. I decided to keep giving him Woundvite chews so that maybe he'd be able to stand, at the very least. For the next few weeks, I started to notice gradual changes in him. His fever began to go down, and he was actually trying to eat a little bit more. Harley even began to try to stand on his deformed foot, and he didn't immediately collapse anymore. I still remember the day he took his first few steps because I was waving around a huge dog treat and taunting him, saying if he came over here, he could have it all to himself. To my surprise, he actually got up and plopped right down in front of me with pleading eyes. I literally dropped the treat in shock, and he scarfed it up right away. That wasn't the end of it either, because he started to actually interact with our other animals. The cats and him had a bit of an alliance because he would follow them around and not attack them like all of the other dogs. Since it was working on him, I decided to use it on the other pets in the shelter, and I noticed all of the animals started to get along so much better with Harley. It was a sharp difference to how quiet he used to be while he laid in pain in his cage all day. Eventually, he started to run in short bursts of energy, almost like he was doing warm-ups. I was so excited to see him do anything at all, but the real change came in one slow afternoon. A man came in looking to adopt a dog, and he said he was willing to adopt anyone. So when I gave him a tour of the cages, I introduced him to literally every dog except for Harley. I knew he was a bit of a challenge for anyone new, so I didn't expect this guy to even want to look at him. But when we passed by Harley's cage, he got straight up and started jumping at the cage. I thought he was being aggressive at first, but the man bent down to pet him and he nearly rolled back his eyes. He started licking all over this guy's face, and I was honestly sitting there shocked because he never even showed that much affection to me before. The man looked at me and asked if he could adopt this one. My gut reaction was to say no because he was still healing, but ever since I started using Woundvite, he was on an upward curve. So I asked my boss, and when he saw Harley himself, he just told me to check if the man could handle him, and then it was clear to go. I was almost afraid to let Harley go, but the man was all clear, so I did. He promised he would send pictures of him, and I gave him a pack of Woundvite chews and told him to give him 4 every day so that he could continue to get better. For the next few weeks, the man would send a picture of Harley doing something new. He was chasing after a ball, begging for treats. He even started hiking with his new owner. I was so happy to see him do better, but now I had to focus on my other dead end patients. But I started to notice an overall trend after giving the other dogs wound bite chews after I saw how well they worked on Harley. My worst cases started getting better faster than I'd ever thought possible, and we had fewer pups that we needed to put down due to their conditions. We even started to have a high adoption rate, which was never achieved here before because no one usually wants damaged goods. One night, I looked at the cages and noticed that we only had one pup left, and I couldn't help but think that if I hadn't started using Woundvite, Harley would be right there with him. So, as some measure of good luck, I decided to adopt the last puppy, because I was never going to allow them to be miserable ever again.